Welcome everyone to another edition of the Friday Night Mega Mirror Special. This week, we are going to be taking a look at a really awesome young creator who has blasted onto the scene with great content and exceptional production value. Blue Earth Thing. That's right folks, we are joined by this exceptional young creator who has a penchant for space exploration and a healthy dislike for Flerfs. So if you want to learn about the US space program, or maybe get a new perspective on stupid conspiracies and flat earth claims, then grab your drinks, get comfortable, and get ready to be impressed when we come back. And we're back. For those of you just joining us, today we are featuring some amazing work by a fantastic young creator, Blue Earth Thing. It's going to be an awesome show tonight, so let's bring him on. Hello, Blue Earth Thing, and welcome. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on, Steaming Cup. It's been fantastic talking to you and chatting with you and everything like that. And you run a great channel. I went in, I watched a couple of your videos and everything. Sadly, I didn't find it very early on, and I don't get to watch as many YouTube videos as I would like to. So I went back and watched a couple of your mirrors and a couple of your debunks and stuff like that, and they're fantastic. I love your channel and everything like that, and I'm so excited to get on. It's honestly an excitement for me.
I'm really glad you could make it onto the show. As usual, I would like to begin by asking my usual opening questions. How did you get started on YouTube, and what is your channel all about?
How I started. So it started off as a Twitter account, basically. Probably December of 2017, I started watching a couple of videos from guys like Professor Stick and Reds and Cool Hard Logic and stuff like that. And I was just amazed that there could be people out there that actually believe in the flat Earth and everything like that. So I wanted to get involved. I wanted to join the fight against the flat Earth. So I started a Twitter account. And it didn't really take off, but it was a lot of fun. I was having a ton of fun on this Twitter account. So about in July or something, I decided I needed to do something more. Twitter's fun and all, but I wanted to step up my game a little bit. So I figured next best thing to do was start a YouTube channel. And, well, my interests lie in space and rocketry and space history and NASA history and stuff like that. And space exploration and expanding. And so I figured I would start a channel that's basis would be rocket history and space exploration, and use that as kind of a base for a debunking channel, because I really hadn't seen any other people doing it, and I thought, man, this is a good idea. So I sat down and started making videos, and it didn't really take off at first. But once I started interacting with other YouTubers, interacting with the community a little more, and getting myself out there and talking to people, and I enjoyed that. This community is fantastic, and I had a blast being in it. And even though the YouTube channel isn't like some 100,000 subscriber YouTube channel doing fantastic and everything like that, it's a load of fun to be involved in doing it. I'm having the time of my life running this channel and everything like that. And also, I feel the pressure is like, I want to make the videos good. I want to make the videos fantastic. Do the best videos that I can possibly do. And just have fun with it. And that's basically what the channel is about. It's about having fun.
That's awesome. In fact, I have to tell you that many of the videos on your channel are things I love to talk about. I really like the variety of things you cover on your channel. I really like the video you did on how the famous blue marble image was captured. Let's have a look.
Blue Earth Thing here, and I'm here to take on a meme. Yes, a meme. But not just any meme, but one of the legendary globe killer memes itself. Flat Earthers often ask why different images from different years using different cameras for different purposes make the Earth look different. Well, I'm here to answer that question. This meme is commonly shared in the Flat Earth circles, and they still use it as proof. Well, I'm here to show Flat Earthers why this proof is nothing more than them not understanding geometry and cameras. In the image, we see 8 different pictures of Earth. and they all do look fairly different from each other. So we will go one by one, exploring the history of the picture, checking what the purpose of it was, and recreating it with my very own globe. The first image of Earth shown is Blue Marble 1972. And can I say, this is a beautiful picture. This is my favorite photo of Earth ever taken. And contrary to popular belief, it is not the first. Though this is the first widely distributed picture of Earth taken. The picture was snapped during the Apollo 11 mission on December 7th, 1972. It was taken during a spare moment by the crew of Apollo 17, but Jack Schmitt is commonly credited as the photographer. Before we go any further, can we take a moment to appreciate this image? First, the original picture was like this. There. Now here, take a look at the detail this image has. To think that this picture was taken in a quick, hot moment. So quick of a moment that Schmitt didn't even have the time to turn the camera over to make north go up. Look at the detail of the clouds and the land. You can even see the 1972 Tamil Nadu cyclone up in the top right corner. Okay, back on target. This image shows the continent of Africa fairly clearly, and below it is the Antarctic ice cap. It was taken with a 70mm camera, with an 80mm lens from a height of 45,000 kilometers at 5 hours and 6 minutes into the mission. From this height, one should be able to see about 43.7% of the Earth's surface. The Apollo crew took this picture when they realized this will be the first time humans have ever seen the Antarctic ice cap, so they took the picture real quick and went back to work. First, let's talk about my little globe. This is just a small globe picked up from Hobby Lobby. It is not the most accurate, but it will do its job. Every now and then you will see where some of the images don't really line up with the seams because it's very sloppily put together. My camera is a Sony camcorder on a tripod. I held it fairly close to try to match it up based on eyesight only. These pictures are not an exact science, but I think they'll do the job here. Obvious differences: the continents are not in the exact same spot. Colors are different, and my camera is not good at taking pictures. But overall, I do believe I did get the sizes right and showed that this picture is perfectly possible to take. The second image on this graphic is known as Blue Marble 2000. This image was not taken in a single moment, but over a long period of time and by multiple cameras. Now, before you call fake, composite does not equal fake. To demonstrate this, take a look at this panorama I took a few years back. In the picture is the city of Birmingham, Alabama. The best Birmingham. This was put together by combining multiple photos into one long image. Now I hope that no one would think that Birmingham is a fake city, or that it does not look like how it does in this picture. Now you can make panoramas like this in Photoshop, and a simple composite is just a panorama with extra layers. This image is a composite with lots of work though. This is a composite of images from multiple satellites that all have different primary functions, and none of which were just to take pretty pictures. The base of this image was taken by a type of geostationary satellite known as GOES that is used by NOAA to observe weather. Now, to get the oceans to look nice, they used data that was collected by the Flerfs satellite during the months of September and October 1997. The land color was taken from data light from a vegetation index from the early September 1997 by a Polar Orbiting Environmental Satellite, or POES. The colors and mountains have been greatly exaggerated in the image for artistic reasons. The same thing goes for the moon. The image is not sold as a single image of Earth, and to be honest, the closest thing to a picture of Earth in this image is the base photo from the GOES. This image was made so that the viewing public would have a nice photo to look at. I cannot find anyone claiming that this is a true single image of Earth. Now for the moment of truth. Is this possible? And looking at it, yeah, it is. Again, the continents are not exact, but they are close enough to show that the sizes are perfectly possible. Our third image is Blue Marble Next Generation, or Blue Marble 2002. This image is much like the previous one. Again, this is a composite from multiple satellites. But unlike the last image of Earth, this one is more like stitching together smaller photos of the surface and less like layering data from different satellites. To make this image, a satellite known as Terra carried the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer, or MODIS, and would take pictures of the surface. Then these images were stitched together later. The surface images were collected from June to September 2001 and were composited every 8 days to avoid clouds blocking the sensor. The oceans were put together using two types of data: shallow water true color data and global ocean color data. Topographic shading was done using the GTOPO-30 satellite. The clouds are a composite of 2 days worth of observations. This image, and more than likely the rest that will be talked about on this video, was put together so that the public would have a beautiful image of Earth to look at. But that only applies to the image as a whole. As for the different parts of the composite, those serve different functions. The pictures of land are used for educational purposes, and the entire map, when put together, is used for observing the environment. These images are available to the public, but before you download, realize these images are absolutely massive. They can contain up to 21,000 pixels across. Not as a whole, across. How this holds up to my globe? I think I nailed it. The continents look spot on, and so do the sizes. This is further proof that this image is perfectly possible to take on a globe Earth. Up next is this 2007 image of Earth, and I'm going to skip it. The position of the land masses are in the same spot as Blue Marble 2000, and I've already demonstrated that is perfectly possible to take. So we will move on and take on two at the same time. And to save time, I will be covering this picture taken in 2013 instead of the one from 2007. That is because the one from 2013 is a little more interesting to me. But let's not ignore the 2007 image. Here are a couple of quick facts on it so we can call it covered. Blue Marble 2007 West was made from data taken from many satellites over multiple years. It was also touched up on and put together by graphic artists. And again, this was made to look very nice for the public. A cool feature in this image is the city lights in Europe, those of which look really cool in this picture. Moving on to the next one. So what is this picture of Earth from 2013? Well, this is the only one in the video that is not associated with the title Blue Marble. This image was taken by the Visible Infrared Imaging Radiometer Suite, or VIIRS, on board the Suomi NPP satellite. Over a 3-day period from July 31st to August 2nd, 2013, the Suomi NPP satellite captured images of Earth's surface that are roughly 3,000 kilometers across, and they were later stitched together to make this image. The way that the image was captured is easily seen when you see the foggy vertical patches. Those foggy areas are sunlight that was hitting the ocean when the satellite made its pass. The reason there are 3 is because that is where the paths were. This entire image was taken using a single satellite with a single camera. So it's a nice change of pace from our previous 3 images that used heavy doses of graphic design. What made this image so important is what it shows. This image caught dust from the Sahara Desert traveling over the Atlantic and into South America. When you zoom in, it is very easy to see. There are also many close-up images of the dust that are publicly available and you can view on your own. This is one of the reasons why this image is one of my favorites. That is because it is pretty much raw, just like Blue Marble 1972. That is why there are clouds that cover up the land masses and just seem to be all over the place. And that's because they are. And how does it look? Well, I think it's spot on. Yeah, it's a little dark at the bottom, but you get the idea. And since this works on this picture, we can also safely assume that it will work on Blue Marble 2007 West without a problem, for they're so closely related. And finally, we get to the most controversial image on this meme, Blue Marble 2012. Well, if you know anything about Flat Earth, regardless of what side you are on, you've probably seen this image. And countless Flat Earthers complaining that the American Southwest is not that large. Blue Marble 2012 is a composite image like the others on this list. The base image was also taken by the VIIRS on board the Suomi NPP satellite. The 8 scans of Earth that make up this picture took place on January 8, 2012. The reason why this image looks so different than the others is because of the unique method that they used to take it. This image was taken at a height of 2,100 kilometers, and that is why so little of the Western Hemisphere is visible. To take this image, the Suomi NPP satellite used nearsighted perspective projection, and this gives the image an extreme fisheye lens look. That is the reason why this is one of my least favorite images of Earth, is the fact that it is so heavily distorted because of the method used to take it. Blue Marble 2012 was not taken for scientific purposes, but instead to give the public a very high-res image to look at. Now, this was a hard one to recreate. First, I tried to use my Sony camcorder like I did the other ones, and it really didn't turn out right. Then, I tried my roommate's Nikon D3200, and it didn't really work either. Then, I tried to use my GoPro Hero 5 while using wide view mode, and that was the closest I could get. Again, it's not perfect, but I think with the equipment that I have, is the best you can expect, and it does prove that this image was perfectly possible to take. I'm going to skip the last one. Not only because I believe that I have proved my point, but because the cloud cover prevents me from being able to get a good look at the land masses. Nevertheless, I believe that I have adequately shown that all the images in this meme are perfectly possible to take, and demonstrated how they were created accurately. If I have missed anything or got something wrong, please leave a comment or contact me on Twitter at BlueEarthThing. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.
That was a great video, well written and very well researched. I suppose it must take a good amount of time to put a video like that together. Can you give us an idea of how you put your videos together?
Yeah, so to get a video together, particularly that Imaging Earth one that you just saw, that's possibly my favorite video I ever made. It's up there. It's up there in my favorite videos I've ever made. I worked a lot of time on that video. That was my first time to really get into editing, like hardcore editing and stuff like that, and making an entire video out of editing and not filming. So that one was a load of fun. How I made that one was I came up with the idea. It took me a while. It took me a long while to come up with this idea. It took a couple of scripts. I had a couple of scripts that I had started, and I still haven't made just because I determined they weren't good enough scripts. And so this one, I came up with the idea. I saw a meme. That meme that you saw in the beginning of the video. And it made me mad. Basically, all my debunks and stuff like that and all the videos that are aimed at flat earthers, it's all because someone made me mad. And that meme made me mad because it's like, it's so easily debunked. That's so easy to show that that's a lie or show that it's false. So I went in, I did research on everything, and I was like, all right, I'll make a 5-minute video on this. Real quick one. Ended up taking 2 weeks to make. I'd sit down for hours, like 6 hours a day, editing that, and I would just get a little bit. That was the only video that I ever did where I did my audio takes, paragraph by paragraph, and wrote it paragraph by paragraph. Now I write the entire script and do the entire script out in one session. That one took me weeks. So if you listen to the video Imaging Earth, you can tell that my voice changes from here to there. Actually, I don't actually accomplish what I said I was going to do in the beginning because it took me 2 weeks to write it. I was writing the script as I was going and everything like that. But the research, that's the main part of everything I do, is I want to make the research correct. I want to research everything well. So that's where all my videos start, especially my Apollo missions videos, is I want to make sure the research is good. For this next video I'm going to do where I take I don't want to tell you. I'll tell you later, but I basically do a thing, and I've spent 3 weeks researching this one thing before I even started on a script. And then when I went through the script, I used some internet sources and everything like that. But most of my videos start with the research. And then I sit down, I build the script. I will lay out a format that I want. And then I'll go through and write the script. And that will take a couple weeks. I'll usually write it a paragraph at a time, take a break, come back at it. And then when I get done with the script, I send it to my roommate, who is my script editor. And once he gets a hold of it, he'll look and make sure everything makes sense. Like the sentences are in the right order and the words are in the right order and everything's spelt correctly. I'm not good at English. There's a running joke amongst my friends and sometimes even in the community that I can't read. And that's partially true. I'm really bad at it. So, once the script is edited and once the script is approved and good and the research is correct and factual, I will do a take. I'll load up a microphone. I've got a microphone right here. This is the one I use to do my videos with. Not this one. This is a different one. This is what I use to do my updates and my other videos with. But I take this microphone right here and I do a take. I'll usually spend a whole day just recording audio. And then once I get done, I chop it all up, make sure it sounds right, put it into Premiere Pro, and then I take my music, and then I figure out all my music. Before I do any of my visuals, I get my music right. All my audio, all my music correct. And then I put in visuals. And I make the visuals tell the story that the music and the script wants to tell. That's what I want to do. Now, when I do a takedown, it's usually because a video has pissed me off. That's basically it. I saw a video on YouTube, it made me mad, and I sat down and I went, I'm going to make this guy look like an idiot. And that's what I try to do any way that I can. And that's why those videos are a little bit lazier than my others. Probably not as well researched, but they're fun.
Well, the time and effort you put into your videos certainly shows. They are very well done. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite topics is the Apollo program. I remember watching the entire Apollo 11 mission on TV as a young boy. But so much happened before that to make it possible. Where does your passion for the space program come from?
I think my love for the space program kind of falls from a mixture between my love of history, just general history, science, and wonder, really, questioning, and everything like that. When I was a little kid, I used to love airplanes. Airplanes were the biggest thing. Airplanes and cars. And I used to take these little airplane books, the big old books. They're thin, but they're big, and they had pictures of airplanes, and I loved them. I used to draw airplanes, and I probably checked that book out maybe 5 or 6 times one year from the school library. And I would read it, and I would watch History Channel documentaries on airplanes and dogfights. And somehow that grew over time into a love for rocketry. And my couple of visits to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center when I was in school got me inspired a little bit. And then something happened. I finally decided to look up at the stars. And I finally decided to get a telescope. And when I got this telescope, I was actually able to see the planets and see the stars for how they really were. And it changed my way of thinking, honestly. It was eye-opening how amazing and beautiful it was. And I'm saving up for a better telescope now, but it makes me want to go into space and explore. It makes me want to help out and be of this generation that's gonna go to Mars and go to the moon and everything like that. And then I want to combine that with my history, so I come up with the Apollo program. The Apollo program is the perfect mix of that wonder, that excitement, that exploration, that technology, that everything you want, everything that all my interests combine into the Apollo program and the Saturn V rocket. So, I'm sorry SLS, but the Saturn V will always be it'll be my favorite rocket and throughout all of time and all of that, particularly for that reason, for the historical reason. And that's basically where it comes from. That's my inspiration. And all of that's only been compounded ever since I started debunking flat earthers. And that's made me want to go into the nitty-gritty of the research and go into and ask the questions why, the questions underneath the basis, and discover what the actual base of science is and what's the actual base of astronomy and why we know this knowledge. Not taking the knowledge and expanding it top, but going back and strengthening that bottom of my knowledge. That's something that I love to do.
That's great. I can see why so much of your content covers it. Let's have a look at the first episode of your series on the Apollo program.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
The moon landing is easily one of the greatest feats that man has ever accomplished. But the sad thing is that most people don't know much about it outside of Neil Armstrong's first steps. Knowing this, I wanted to set out and create a series dedicated to the moon landings and the missions that got them there. So I packed up my camera, decided to go on up to Huntsville and visit the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Here, I got to see the rockets themselves and everything it took to get man on the moon. This series will uncover the entirety of the Apollo missions and all the tiny little details, but let's save those for other episodes. Today, we will cover the basics, like what was the Apollo missions. Just 10 years after the end of World War II, the world is now in another, but this time, it's a cold one. The Cold War was not waged like any other war before it, but instead, the battles were waged in culture, economics, fear, and technology. And a battle between the Soviet Union and the United States arose to see who would become the more technologically superior country. This would be known as the space race, and it was started almost as soon as World War II ended. Both the US and the USSR recruited the top scientists from Germany after their surrender because neither wanted to see the other have them. The Soviets were headed up by Sergei Korolev and over 2,000 German engineers and scientists who worked on the infamous German V-2 rocket. The Americans recruited the likes of Wernher von Braun and got a nice group of over 1,600 German scientists and engineers. Both sides quickly got to work studying the German V-2 and tried to develop their own. The Soviets formed their own space agency and struck the first blow of the space race, Sputnik 1. This was the first man-made satellite to orbit the Earth and got the US populace heavily involved in the space race. The US quickly answered by putting their own satellite into orbit, Explorer 1, forming the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, in 1958. A series of unmanned missions would escalate the space race as both sides were planning to put a man into space. This formed Project Mercury for the US and the Vostok program in the USSR. Before either country accomplished putting a man into space, there was already a plan under wraps that would put the entire space race to an end. A feat so great that the entire world would unite as one and watch along in equal amazement at what humans have accomplished. The feat was to put a man on the moon, and the plan was the Apollo program. The Apollo program was formally announced in July 1960. Eisenhower wanted Project Mercury to have a follow-up that involved 3 astronauts having the capability to dock in space, orbit the moon, land, and return home. Shortly after, the Apollo program had made great progress in a short amount of time. John F. Kennedy was elected president later that year, and his support of NASA would do wonders into bringing the Apollo program into reality. Then on May 25th, just 20 days after Alan Shepard became the first American in space, Kennedy released an urgent message to Congress that said that he wanted to commit this country to landing a man on the moon and bringing him back safely by the end of the decade. Shortly after that, the workforce for NASA doubled. They opened the Marshall Space Flight Center in 1960, the Johnson Space Center in 1962, and the Kennedy Space Center in 1963. The Apollo team quickly got to work thinking up ways to get to the moon. 4 plans were debated on how to get us there. There was the Lunar Surface Rendezvous plan, where 2 crafts would be sent to the moon, one with fuel to get back and the other with the astronauts. Both would land, and the astronauts would have to figure out a way to get the fuel from the fuel canisters into the returning craft. The second plan was known as the Earth Orbit Rendezvous, where many different rockets would assemble a single spacecraft in low Earth orbit, then fly it to the moon and back. Later on, a plan similar to this would be used to assemble the ISS in space. A third idea was the Direct Ascent plan, which would be to directly shoot for the moon without orbiting it. This plan would have required the insanely huge Nova rocket, which was never built. The winning plan was the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous plan, where they would orbit the moon and use a lander to go down to the surface. To get back home, they would use a small engine to fire back up and dock with the orbiting part of the spacecraft, then head on home. NASA used 4 different rockets throughout the Apollo program, each with a different purpose. The first one was known as Little Joe 2, and it was used to test the rocket before any of the actual Apollo missions took place. The Little Joe 2 was used to test the LES, or Launch Escape System. It was much smaller than the rest of the rockets, and it could only reach 74,000 feet or 22,600 meters. It flew from 1963 to 1966. The second rocket used and the first heavy lifter was the Saturn I. The Saturn I was used to test the aerodynamics of the LEM and service module that would eventually be placed on the Saturn V. This was not just a test vehicle though, as the Saturn I was also used to launch the Pegasus satellites. Only used from 1961 to 1965, the Saturn I flew just 10 times. The Saturn 1B was an improvement of the Saturn I. This rocket had a J2's engine in the second stage and an upgraded first stage, which will allow for a payload twice the size of the Saturn I to reach orbit. It was used in Apollo 1, 5, and 7, then flown 4 more times after the Apollo program ended to get crew to the Skylab. Last but not least, we have the king of all rockets, the Saturn V. This massive 363-foot rocket can lift 100,000 pounds into space and is still, as of this recording, the most powerful rocket ever constructed. This is the rocket that got man to the moon and back, and after the Apollo program, it was used to launch America's first space station, Skylab. There were 17 Apollo missions, and each one will be covered in depth in the future through their own video. AS-201, or Apollo 1A, was not the first unmanned flight of the Apollo program, but it was the first to be given the Apollo name. It was launched on February 26, 1966, to test the Saturn 1B rocket and heat shield, but had an early shutdown. AS-203, or Apollo 3, was the next to launch, and it was designed to test the SIVB stage and its ability to restart in space. It was launched on July 5, 1966, and was a partial success, but did accomplish its primary goals. After that was AS-202, or Apollo 2. That was a repeat of AS-201, and successfully tested the heat shield on August 25, 1966. NASA seemed like it was ready for its first manned mission. This was planned to test the command module in low Earth orbit for 2 weeks. It was crewed by space veteran Gus Grissom, pilot Ed White, and pilot Roger B. Sheffey. Tragedy struck on January 27, 1967, as a fire broke out in the command module during a dress rehearsal and killed all 3 astronauts. Following the Apollo 1 tragedy, NASA had to go back to the drawing board and redesign the capsule. NASA would also retire the title Apollo 1 in honor for the brave astronauts who gave their life for the Apollo program. Apollo 4 was the first launch of the Saturn V, and it successfully demonstrated the SIVB stage's ability to restart in space. This unmanned mission was launched on November 9, 1967. Next was Apollo 5 on January 22, 1968, and this was the first flight of the Lunar Module, or LEM. It orbited the Earth and tested the LEM in space, including an abort strategy called Fire in the Hole. Apollo 6 was launched on April 4, 1968, and it would demonstrate the translunar ejection capability of the Saturn V. Though it did not accomplish this goal due to engine trouble, it did give NASA enough confidence to start their manned flights. Apollo 7 lifted off on October 11, 1968, and it was the USA's first manned mission to space in nearly 2 years. They would test the command capsule in low Earth orbit, which would include testing the altitude meter and livability of the capsule. Apollo 8 followed, and it was the first manned flight of the Saturn V rocket. It lifted off on December 21, 1968, and orbited the moon 10 times, then returned to Earth. This was not only the first time had man left low Earth orbit, but it was also the first time man had ever laid eyes on the far side of the moon. Apollo 9 would be the first manned flight with a service module and LEM. It lifted off on March 3, 1969, and would test the 2 additions in low Earth orbit. It also tested the Portable Life Support System, or the PLSS, that would later be used on the moon. The Apollo 10 was launched on May 18, 1969, and it was used as a dress rehearsal for the moon landing. It would come within 15.6 kilometers of the lunar surface, but would not land. They would instead test the redocking maneuvers required to get back to Earth from the moon. Then, on the 16th of July, 1969, the world watched as Apollo 11 lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center and carried its 3 crew members, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, to the moon. 4 days later, on July 20th, 1969, the Eagle landed, and Neil Armstrong took his famous steps to become the first man to walk on the moon. On the surface, they collected moon rocks, placed a few scientific instruments on the surface, and tested man's ability to do tasks on the moon. Apollo 12 followed a few months later on November 14, 1969, and it landed in the Ocean of Storms. This mission was not only tasked to land on the moon and do some science, but it also had to land in a very specific area near the Surveyor 3 drone. The infamous Apollo 13 followed on April 11, 1970, and it had planned to land on the moon. Before it reached the moon's orbit though, an explosion in the command capsule caused the crew to abandon the landing and return to Earth using the lunar lander as a lifeboat of sorts. Apollo 14 launched on January 31st, 1971, and did successfully land on the moon. This was the first moon landing with a color TV camera, and it was also the first to conduct material science experiments in space. Apollo 15 launched on July 26, 1961. This was the first time the astronauts got to drive the Lunar Roving Vehicle, or moon buggy, around on the surface. The Lunar Roving Vehicle would also be used for the remaining lunar landings. Then Apollo 16 left Earth on April 16, 1971, and would just continue the experiments on the moon. The crew spent a little under 3 days on the lunar surface before returning home. Finally, on the 7th of December, 1972, the final mission of the Apollo program lifted off. Apollo 17 would reach the moon and spend 3 days on the surface. This was also the mission that captured the famous photograph Blue Marble 1972. Then, on the 19th of December 1972, the Apollo program ended, with Apollo 17 splashing down in the middle of the South Pacific. This would be the conclusion of an epic era in space exploration.
That was awesome. You certainly know your stuff. I also like the stuff you do on conspiracy theories and flat earth. What is the one thing that bugs you the most about flat earthers?
Oh man, can I can I just say everything? Everything bugs me about. Oh my god, they all bug me. Every one of them. No, but I think what bugs me the most is their blatant dishonesty, and their blatant denial of reality and all that stuff. It just gets under my nerves whenever they can do that, and they think that they become arrogant, so arrogant that they think that they are smarter than everyone else in the world. That bugs me. You know, it's like that meme. It's like the SpongeBob and the guy meme where you have Patrick and the dude, and he's trying to give him the wallet, and he takes the wallet, and he's like, "This wallet fell out of your pocket," and Patrick goes, "Yeah. And in this wallet is a license with your name on it." Yes. This is your license. Yes. This was in the wallet that fell out of your pocket. Correct. So this is your wallet. Yes. So take the wallet. No. Why? It's not my wallet. And you just you just yell because it's, how can you be so stupid? That's me. That's always me. That's constantly me whenever I'm seeing this stuff. And I'll just walk through the house just, oh my God. Well, these guys shut up. And I think that's what bugs me most.
I think we should have a look at a recent video you did to address the tired old claims about gravity. The one thing that no flat earther has the mental capacity to understand.
Blue Earth thing here, and have you ever had the problem of finding something so stupid you don't know how to respond to it? Yeah, we're gonna try with this one.
It's a natural force that keeps us all from flying off into So I want to talk a little bit about that phrase. That phrase that we get so often. You know, if it weren't for gravity, we'd all go flying off into space.
Alright, cool, let's go do that. And I'm 100% confident that you are going to have a nice, well thought out, tangible point by the end of this video, and that this is not 7.5 minutes of you incoherently rambling on and on. Oh god.
As ridiculous as that sounds, there are still adults, supposedly rational thinking adults, that still say that exact same thing.
Yes, there are rationally thinking adults out there in the world. I don't know what's hard to believe about that.
The situation is that we've all been subjected to an extensive propaganda campaign that has resulted in people operating with total disregard for their own God-given senses.
It's nice to see a little bit of an insight into his indoctrination, isn't it?
And this has led people to believe in ideologies that go completely against common sense and rational thought.
Dude, quit talking about flat earthers and start getting on to your globe debunkings.
When individuals express their knowledge that they live on a flat, stationary plane, one of the most popular responses we get is in the form of gravity. And gravity is used to explain away everything that makes absolutely no sense in relation to your day-to-day experience. It's the glue that holds this whole thing together.
And I would love for a single flat earther to give me one point, one reason why gravity does not make sense.
In gravity, and we're told to respond by explaining gravity and saying that gravity is this amazing force on Earth that pulls everything towards the center of mass from all directions.
Gravity is the phenomenon in which all things with mass and gives off energy is attracted to one another. Here on Earth, that is what gives things weight, but gravity is everywhere and affects everything. That is one of the simplest definitions that I can give you. If you wanted me to, we could go on for hours.
This infers that when people say that believe in a globe, that there exist people thousands of miles beneath your feet who are walking, driving, riding bikes, flying airplanes, finding love and loss, experiencing tragedy and hope, all while living their entire existence upside down relative to their position.
I'm going to be kind here and just assume that you meant relative to your position and not relative to their position, because if I didn't, you would just sound retarded. Now, there's a reason why we have a north, south, east, and west, because we need to objectify the directions we're talking about. Up, down, left, and right are relative values. You can objectively see this by saying left and right, by looking at someone who's looking at you and just say, hey, look to your right, and you're both going to look different directions. Why would that not be the same with up and down? How do you know that you're not the one who's upside down and they're not the ones who's right side up?
And when people say that, I don't believe that they're really thinking that deeply about what they're saying.
I don't think you've ever thought deeply about what you're saying in your life.
And what you're seeing here is a visual demonstration of just that. I know it looks silly, but we globe skeptics or flat earthers, we're not the ones that believe that this nonsense actually matches up with reality.
Oh dear, it seems as if the van is right side up, because up and down are relative. Oh.
Just because that's what we're told. But if you believe that gravity's strong enough to be pulling everything towards the center of mass, and let's go ahead and take a look at this example and break it down a little bit. A person can be standing next to a 4,000-pound vehicle and step outside said vehicle and stand next to a helium balloon while that balloon is attempting to float upward to the sky that is relatively beneath someone else's feet.
Yeah, I don't see the problem here. The balloon is going up, and the guy is standing on the earth. Everything seems normal, nicely right side up. I don't know why you're upside down, though.
Because people believe that's a thing. You can dig through the earth and then come out the other side, and there's going to be sky.
Well, ignoring all the faults and reasons why we can't actually go and dig straight through the Earth, including a molten core, the effects of gravity, the pressure of the rock above you, and all that reasons, yes, you would come out to sky and ground, and it would be right side up. But that wouldn't be a problem because the effects of gravity was pulling on you in that direction for half of that journey anyway.
Up there, when you get out on the other side. People believe that gravity is strong enough to hold this 4,000-pound van to the ground because that's what you're seeing right here.
You do know how gravity is calculated, right? Oh, who am I kidding? Of course you don't. So I'll just put it in some layman's terms real quick. You can easily calculate the force of gravity here on Earth using the equation F equals mg. F is the force of the gravity on Earth, m is the mass of an object, and g is the acceleration of gravity. So, disregarding units in this situation because we don't really need them, let's say that the acceleration of gravity is 10 and the mass of this object is 1. The force that we would get out would be 10 units of force. Now, let's say that a mass of an object is 2. Now we would get 20 units of force. As you can tell, the more mass an object is, the more units of this gravitational force that this object will experience. Ergo, the more mass that something has on the surface of Earth, the larger the attraction of gravity is. So it should be easy to understand why a van is sitting still on the surface of the Earth.
Somebody can step out of that same vehicle with absolutely no detection of this tremendous force.
You do detect the force. It's called your weight.
That's holding the van to the ground, and as ridiculous as this sounds and looks, that's exactly what most of the Earth's population has been trained to believe. And then you're going to have these so-called experts on the internet who would shrug that off and offer up word salad, pseudo-scientific jargon.
Lack of self-awareness, thy name is D-Marble.
Word trickery to confuse people, using terms like selective gravity to explain away these things that have no relation to reality.
Oh, like we should trust you on what has no relation to reality. You know, because you believe in a sun that hovers above the Earth, going round and around, yet somehow dips beneath the horizon?
Now let's address this logical fallacy of gravity's what's keeping us all from flying off into space.
Well, to start, you need to present us with a logical fallacy, which you have failed to do so.
And add a little question in there. Now, those of us who actually trust in our senses to interpret reality and have grown a skepticism for the globe model, and we find it easier to conclude that gravity is a non-existent force and that we all, meaning everyone existing on Earth, all of us, we experience life on a flat, motionless plane.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but I experience life on a globe. Now, recently I went on a flight. And on this flight, I thought I'd like to do some experimentation. So I downloaded a thermodolite app onto my phone, and whilst taxiing at the airport, I snapped this picture. As you can see, it's just 0.1 degree off of perfectly level with your eye level, and it seems like it's not calibrated completely correctly as the eye level is just a little bit above the horizon. But that shouldn't matter, because what we're measuring is the difference, not the accuracy of the app per se. Now, once we got into the air and the captain said we were at a height of 35,000 feet, I snapped this picture. As you can tell, the horizon has clearly dropped. This is me using a tool because my senses cannot detect this 3.4 degree change in my eye level. Do you understand that, D-Marble?
But if gravity is the force that's keeping us all from flying off into space, then this would mean that there's some force, some repellent force that's either pushing everything away from the surface of the Earth, or that there's some force that's external to the Earth that's pulling everything away from the surface of the Earth in all directions, relatively.
No, you do not need a repellent force. You see, gravity cancels itself out because you are pulling on the Earth at the same force that the Earth is pulling on you. There is also another force that is acting upon you on Earth. It's centripetal force. From the spin of the Earth, If gravity were to just magically go away, the centripetal force of you going around and around and around on Earth would toss you off the surface almost immediately. But before you flat earthers get your britches in a wad, the centripetal force that you experience is extremely low, and gravity cancels that out fairly easily.
This would mean that there's some force that gravity's constantly in this eternal struggle with. Well, as far as we know, there's no repulsive force pushing everything away from the Earth.
Aren't you guys the ones who are always crying like, if the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles an hour, then we would all get thrown off the surface?
And as far as the external force pulling things off the Earth, that gravity's supposed to be constantly fighting against, well, some people would say that's the vacuum of space, and, you know, attribute all that to, you know, this infinite vacuum of space. But it's been demonstrated, and it's been discussed at length by other content creators, that the idea of an enclosed system existing next to a vacuum without a physical membrane or a barrier between the two, that's a physical impossibility.
Real quick, thought experiment. If there's a pressure gradient, where does this gradient stop? And why does it stop? Alright guys, that's it for me. I can't handle any more of this stupid. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see the original video, I'll have a link to it in the description below. Please do not go and leave any nasty comments on D-Marble's video. He has enough trouble feeding himself in the morning. If you like, please leave a comment on this video, or like and subscribe. Also, if you want, check me out on Twitter at the handle Blue Earth Thing. Same thing on Instagram, Blue Earth Thing. Thank you guys for watching. Blue Earth Thing out.
Well, that's about all the time we have. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here, and it was fun getting to know more about you and your awesome channel. Is there anything you would like to share with our viewers before we close out?
So, yeah, definitely. Let me show myself out real quick. Show your own self out. Go, if you're not subscribed to him, definitely do. Saving Cup of Reason and everything like that. He runs a fantastic channel, and I'm not joking when I say it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. But definitely my channel, Blue Earth Thing on YouTube. There's 3 places that you want to find me if you want to get Blue Earth Thing content. And the first one's YouTube. This is obviously my mainstay. This is my flagship, as it be. This is where I post my videos and everything like that. And yeah, every now and then it'll look like the channel's a little dead, and I haven't put out a video for a month or so. But trust me, I'm working on something. I'll just make sure it's going to be a good one. But if you want constant updates and you want to interact with me a lot, hit up my Twitter account, Twitter at Blue Earth Thing. And right there too. The Twitter handle is literally Blue Earth Thing. Hit me up on Twitter. That's where I spend most of my time. I'll get on Twitter and argue with flat earthers. I'll interact with people. I love it. My DMs are open if you want to hit me up. Another place, I forgot to mention this before, but another place is my Discord. If you want to hit me up, I don't check it as often, so I don't get to see like ats, but you can definitely DM me on Discord if you can find me. I'm in the Shills channel and stuff like that. But if you want some exclusive content, and I'll tell it to you guys here, if you want exclusive behind the scenes content and updates on videos and nice Blue Earth Thing stuff, and get to see me in my daily life, hit up my Instagram at Blue Earth Thing on Instagram. That's where you get some very exclusive stuff. So yeah, hit me up there if you want to get some nice behind the scenes stuff.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for being here. I'm really looking forward to your next video, and we wish you luck with your channel's future growth.
Yeah, man, it's been fantastic. I've had a blast doing this. I can't believe I got the opportunity to. Like I said, I watched a couple of the videos. I got to watch a couple of the Mega Mirrors and stuff like that in the past, and I'm so happy to be on one. And it's been fantastic. If you haven't subbed to, if he hasn't gotten to show himself out, Steaming Cup of Reason, if you haven't subbed to him, do it right now, guys. I don't know what you're waiting for. Do it right now. This is a fantastic guy, a great channel. I love talking to him every chance I get on Twitter and on Discord and through YouTube and everything like that. So thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast. And I'll see you next time. Blue Earth thing out.
And that about wraps it up for this week. We hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of the Friday Night Mega Mirror Special featuring Blue Earth Thing. If you haven't been to his channel yet, please visit at the end of this show. I promise you will enjoy every video he's done so far and will have you going back for more. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, this is Spike signing off. See ya!